in our ignorance, we want to like take, and in our fear, we want to take back control of our lives and stuff, right? But we mustn't do that. And I think that's very important, actually.
Welcome to the Bible in 1 Year podcast, brought to you by two Brits and a Bible.
Today is day 356, covering 1 Peter 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
One of the cheeky little South African accent there, kind of because we had a recent guy follow us from South Africa, and he commented, and he has his own Bible channel going as well, which is pretty banging. Like pretty young, pretty new to the YouTube as well, by the looks of it, but some cool little stuff in there.
Love that. Love that.
Revelation according to LeBone, I think, or something like that. I forgot, and I'll maybe put a tag on it for it. But whatever.
Yeah, love that. That's cool.
So 1 Peter, written by the Apostle Peter in and around AD 61 to 63-ish, shortly before his death, and pretty much written to encourage the Christians of Asia Minor, which is modern-day Turkey, to challenge and encourage them to be faithful to Christ. There's so much, again, emphasis on showing your identity in Christ by acting as citizens of God's kingdom, similar to what we were chatting about with James, which, having watched the Bible Project video, would have been called Jacob. So that was a bit of a head twister, trying to get my head around that. Is actually James was Jacob, but whatevs. Peter is doing the same thing in this one, basically.
AKA the Rock.
El Rocco.
I love the idea Jesus just like, oi, come here, rock boy. Get over it.
Although he would have been Simon at the time. So
yeah.
But yeah, either way. So jumping straight in with one, I feel like I'm still in rush mode from doing James and rushing through it so quickly. I feel like we might have a little bit more flexibility today. Let's just chill it back. Cheers, dude. So 1 verse 4, and into an inheritance that can never perish, spoil or fade. This inheritance is kept in heaven for you. Kind of jumped in halfway through a sentence there, but whatever. Just this concept of the work we're doing here on earth is building an inheritance that will never fade, will never disappear in heaven. And the analogy that I always think of is investing. You're just putting money aside and just trusting that it will keep growing. There's no necessary guarantee that it will with investments, but generally speaking, they will continue to grow over the years and the decades. But everything we're doing, no matter how big or how small, half the things that we think are tiny little things are probably building bigger inheritances for us. And until we get to heaven, we don't have a clue what that's actually going to look like. But it's just this exciting, I don't know. I'm just stoked to get to heaven and see what our inheritances look like and what that actually means.
Yeah, dude, that's really interesting because, yeah, exactly. Like if you want to put faith in, the stock market, you can 100,000 times more put faith in God's promise that, what we invest here will yield out there. So, yeah, that's so cool. That's a really great point. On the other side of it as well, so 1 Peter 1:6, in all this greatly rejoice, though now for a little while you may have had to suffer grief in all kinds of trials. So remember that everything on this earthly life is so short compared to the eternity of heaven. So if you have to suffer and struggle a bit here in order to invest more and be more faithful and so on for heaven, it's a great option, right? Better to have even 80 years of suffering on this planet and then have more reward in heaven to come. I just think that that's a no-brainer, really. So yeah, kind of a cool little thing. I wasn't going to say this one, but I might as well just chuck. Oh wait, no, I'm sorry. You got 1:14. My bad.
I do. So as obedient children, do not conform to the evil desires you had when you lived in ignorance. And this kind of made me think a little bit, really, because I've been a Christian my whole life, but I've led some very sinful or done some very sinful things, been in some very sinful times in my life, etc. You've been there for a good majority of them. And this whole concept of when you lived in ignorance doesn't just mean before you became Christian. I think for you, it's a very clear black and white of when you were in ignorance and then became Christian, were saved, met Jesus, and then sort of how you are now. But for me, I was trying to sort of pencil that back in. And I think it's the same kind of realization I had a few years back with the parable of the sower, where I previously had it in my mind of like, oh, before I became, non-Christians are in the bad soil. I'm a Christian, so I'm in the good soil. Actually, no, each season has its own sort of soil for the sake of the analogy and the parable, but your own season needs to be where you're rooted and whether you're living in ignorance in that season, because our evil desires can overtake us in an instant if we're not careful and if we're not managing them. Just because we're Christian and we're saved doesn't mean we can't be tempted by them. We were chatting yesterday about the whole resist the devil and he'll flee from you, come near to God and he'll come near to you, which is James 4 verse 7. And it was that same kind of logic that I was sort of putting into this as well.
Yeah, that's good, man. That's good. Sorry, you're gonna have to do a graphic for that one, but you are. So but no, that's really good. One thing I'd add to that is I feel like, you know, we are still, even as Christians, somewhat in some ignorance, right? We're still on a journey. We're still on a walk with God.
Yeah.
So we become less and less ignorant, hopefully, as we spend more time with God, more time in the Word, that sort of thing. But yeah, there's like a clear black and white for me of like utter ignorance, the veil being lifted, becoming saved. But even now, I'm becoming less and less ignorant, hopefully, with God's grace and God's guidance over time. Yes. So that's kind of an interesting point. So we've actually not got much time. We better jog on a little bit. So I see you've got another BIOV.
Yeah, just BIOV.
Go for it, mate.
So 2 verse 17, 1 Peter 2 verse 17, show proper respect to everyone. Love your fellow believers, fear God, honor the emperor. Yeah. Bible in one verse.
I love that. Yeah. I love that I came up with that a while back, and now you can't stop seeing them, and you're getting some bang points. That's awesome. 1 Peter 2:23, when they hurled their insults at him, he did not retaliate. When he suffered, he didn't make threats. Instead, he entrusted himself to him who judges justly. So, you know, Christ modeled what we should aim for ourselves. Let God's will be done. It's very, very difficult. That also adds to the ignorance thing we were just saying, I think. Like sometimes in our ignorance, we want to like take, and in our fear, we want to take back control of our lives and stuff, right? But we mustn't do that. And I think that's very important, actually, because that's a way of also then slipping into what you just said in 1:14, evil desires and so on as well.
Very true. That's good.
Full circle here on 2 Brits in the Bible.
I had a very short one, just because it's kind of a controversial one next. 3 verse 7, husbands in the same way be considerate as you live with your wives and treat them with respect as the weaker partner and as heirs with you of the gracious gift of life, so that nothing will hinder your prayers. Yeesh, I can tell you right now, Melody is not the weaker partner out of the two of us. That's fully on me. So just difficult one. Again, the Bible being descriptive, not prescriptive. But don't let people take that out of context and misquote the Bible.
Right. That's very probably Greek for this, actually says specifically. Or actually, no, it'd be Hebrew because it's Peter. So that word weaker could easily be mistranslated as something else. I might have a little look into that at some point. Okay, so then 1 Peter 3 verse 9, do not repay evil with evil or insult with insult. On the contrary, repay evil with blessing, because to this you were called, so that you may inherit a blessing. So this links both to the words of Jesus when he says about turning the other cheek and loving our enemies, but it also is like way bigger than that. This would have like completely subverted the justice system of the day, which would have been an eye for an eye. And he's saying, nah, not eye for an eye, actually turn the other cheek, look the other way, love your enemy, sort of thing. So you can just imagine how countercultural, and again, we serve a God that is creating the upside down kingdom, as we've both said before in certain things.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense, man. I like that. That's good. I've got just a couple more. I'll probably just do I might just do them both quickly actually, and then let you finish it. So 3:15, I like this. Always be prepared to give an answer to anyone who gives you the reason for the hope that you have. In sales, we're called to have an elevator pitch. Like if you're in a lift with somebody and give you 10 seconds just to talk to somebody about why they should buy insurance, buy a car, etc. I feel like we should have like a 10-second, this is why I'm a Christian, this is why it's important. We should work on that elevator pitch for ourselves. And then in 5, be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Resist, because you know the fellow believers throughout the world are going through the same kind of suffering. So similar to one we had yesterday. Resist the enemy and he will flee.
Love that. That elevator pitch one, you and I need to talk more about and try and come up with something good.
Yeah.
And that won't be too hard. Maybe we'll use the BIOV. Just a quick one from me. I felt personally attacked in 1 Peter 4 verse 3. You've spent enough time in the past doing what the pagans choose to, living in debauchery, lust, drunkenness, orgies, carousing, and detestable idolatry. And I was like, Oh man, they got my number before I was a Christian. Yeah. So anyway, tomorrow we're going to be into 2nd Peter, and also, oh no, that's it. 1, 2, and 3. So why don't you beautiful, beautiful people pick up your Bibles, get reading, like this, share this. See you tomorrow.